Hi everyone, my name is Victoria Fernandez and welcome to my channel. I like to inspire mental health. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I post weekly videos on mental health and my experience with bipolar disorder. So in this week's video, I'm going to talk about 10 misconceptions that people have about mental illnesses. Now, I will be dividing this video into two parts. In the next video, I'll make 7 more because there's just way too many misconceptions out in the world about what it's like to have mental illness and who has it and so much more. Before we start, I do want to say that I make playlists for you guys to find my videos in an easier way based on your needs, whether that is finding videos about anxiety, OCD, or bipolar disorder. You can click on the playlist button to find out more. And if you want me to make a different playlist, please comment down below. So for this week's video, I am utilizing 3 different resources. I researched from NAMI, mentalhealth.gov, and Supercuidadores based on, what is the world saying about mental illness? What are the misconceptions? And I kind of wanted to put my own spin on them and talk about it in the sense of my own experiences. So with that, the number one myth that I've heard so much in my life, and it's everywhere, is that people who have mental illnesses are crazy. And I don't know why this happens. I think there's so much, I think the media has a lot to do with it and how they portray people who are mentally ill. But the truth is that there's in America, there's 1 in 5 people who have a mental illness, and around the world there's millions of people as well. So actually it's more common than you think, and no, we are not crazy. We're human beings, and mental illnesses are like any other disease. They're like diabetes, as used in the articles, or anything else that can affect us. The thing is that people don't treat other types of illnesses, whether that's physical or whether that's something such as diabetes. They don't treat it the same way as a mental illness because they perceive mental illness as being something that makes people weak or have all these negative connotations over it. But what people don't realize is that they probably know somebody who has a mental illness, and probably that person has never told them about it, or they don't even know that they have a mental illness. But it is so common out there, and it's not just people having depression or anxiety or this or that. There's people who have all different kinds of mental illnesses out there that live a good and normal life, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So myth number 2 is that people who have mental illnesses are violent. And I can tell you, I'm not a violent person whatsoever, and anyone or nobody that I've ever met who has a mental illness is violent either. And that can be shown with the statistics. NAMI says that only 5% of all crimes in the United States are of somebody who has a mental illness, a serious mental illness. So most people are not dangerous, and I can guarantee you, just as I said before, that people have a mental illness and that they live a really good and normal life, and you don't actually notice that they have anything. But no, we are not violent. I think with my own experiences, there was a time where I wanted to hurt myself because I was feeling very suicidal. This is before I was medicated for my bipolar and OCD. And I wanted to hurt myself, but I would never hurt someone else because my brain, it had to do with me. I was not a violent person, and you'll find that most people aren't. And that's just a huge misconception, and I feel like that's very troubling because it creates fear of mental illnesses. And then when somebody has a mental illness, they don't want to admit it, they don't want to get help because they don't want to be labeled as dangerous, crazy, and violent and all that kind of stuff. So we need to get rid of that misconception. Misconception number 3 is that psychiatric medications are an easy way out or are bad. So that is definitely not true. Just because you have psychiatric medications does not mean that your life becomes easier from one day to another, as well as there's just a whole process of getting help, with a psychologist and all that kind of stuff. But in no means it's an easy way out. My experience with medications has been really rough sometimes. There's come a lot of vomiting, being the wrong dosage, not feeling better, trial and error with the years of experience and having to do this over and over again. And it takes a while to find the right one. So I can guarantee you that nobody really wants to be taking a medication. So it's definitely not an easy way out. Medications are something that is very hard to take, and even just the things of starting to take medications, it's who am I? Am I the person that I am while taking medications, or am I the person that I am without the medications? So it's a whole psychological thing that goes up here too. And myself, if I didn't have to take medications, I definitely wouldn't be taking medications. It's no way easy out. And also, it doesn't cure you. Like, you have to do the work also. You have to go to the therapy, you have to talk about everything that's going on in your life, and have some coping mechanisms to help you deal with life. Misconception number 4 is that mental illnesses will never happen to you or to somebody you love or to your kid or whatever. Anybody in this world can develop a mental illness. I mean, mental illnesses are genetic sometimes, and oftentimes they might develop in different stages of your life. Or there's people who have symptoms and don't get help until they're 50. So just because it's something you don't want that to happen to you doesn't mean that it can never happen to you. It can happen to absolutely anyone. And sometimes traumatic experiences are the things that trigger a mental illness. So there's so much behind that, and I feel like the fear of getting it can be so harmful, because sometimes people who are so afraid to have it themselves or for somebody that they love to have it is that they don't get help once they have symptoms, and they are hesitant to improve their lives through therapy or other measures. So it's important to realize that anybody can develop a mental illness, and it's not just like a selective few. It's not like crazy people or people that we see in movies. Anybody can. Misconception number 5 is that it'll go away, your mental illness will go away with praying. And that is something that I have gone before, like, oh, just pray about it and it'll go away. Although praying and having a religious affiliation can help a lot of people overcome, it is not the only thing that you need to feel better and to cure or improve your mental health. Because mental illnesses are a serious thing, just like any other illness. Like, you can pray about cancer going away, but most likely you're still going to be doing chemotherapy or other measures to help save that person. Same thing goes with your mental illness. Yes, you can pray about it, and that helps a lot of people, but that's not the only thing. There needs to be some type of help, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, maybe medications. So it's important to support your loved ones and not just tell them that pray it away. Pray and it'll go away, you'll feel better, because it doesn't necessarily work like that. Misconception number 6 is that people with mental illnesses are damaged. And that is a very sad misconception, because no, we are not damaged. Mental illnesses can actually bring a lot of strength to our lives and can bring us a lot of experiences that help us make the world better. And so I think that whenever somebody says, if you have a mental illness, like, your life is over, you're damaged, you're all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times the people who's diagnosed with that tells themselves those horrible words because that's what society tells us, but it's not true. Somebody who has a mental illness can do so many amazing things, and I can guarantee you people that you look up to could have a mental illness, or some of them do. And it's important to realize that, because it's important to realize how common it is and that it does not have to ruin your life. I mean, I think it's also how much you put into it. Like, if you get the help necessary, if you go to your psychiatrist, then that way you can live a full life. And it is definitely possible. I mean, I'm doing it, and I have a mental illness, and I'm not damaged. I know that I can do a lot in the world to make it better. So it's definitely not true. Although I do want to say on that note that I have always been a little different than a lot of other people. And yes, that might be because I have, my mental illnesses, because they make me act a certain way sometimes. But that doesn't make me damaged. That just makes me different. Everybody has something different about other people. If not, this world would be really boring. The thing is that people don't like to talk about mental illness types of things, and they just categorize people as, you're weird, you're this, you're that, and they disregard them completely. But that's not okay, because we're all human, we all have feelings, and we all have a value, despite whatever we are going through. And it's important to remember that. Number 7 would be that psychiatric illnesses are not real illnesses. And that is a really bad misconception, because that leads to a lot of people not actually getting help. But as I mentioned before, having a mental illness is just like having something like diabetes, and it's something that should be treated. And when treated, you can live a normal life. So definitely not true. I mean, just because it's up here and not, for example, you breaking your leg, doesn't make it any less real. And I think that a lot of people put those down, that people put down the people who are emotional or can't, have control over how they're feeling. And that person might just need help. And oftentimes those issues can be resolved by going to a psychiatrist or through a therapist. So if we understand that they are just like other illnesses. We can make a better world and we can actually help save lives. So another one that's very, very important, number 8, is that people say, you know, you're not depressed, you don't have a mental illness. Everyone feels sad at some point in their life. That's normal. That doesn't mean that you have a mental illness. Now, that misconception derives from the fact that people think that people with mental illnesses are crazy or have something wrong with them. And because of that, they don't want this person to have that. So they're like, everybody goes through that. But it's not like that. Like I've gotten that so many times where someone's like, you know, you just went through this or went through that, and that doesn't mean that you have bipolar disorder. That doesn't mean that you have a mental illness. And I'm like, you weren't there through every single day that I was struggling. And even then, you're not there with me 24 hours to understand the thoughts in my head. You're not inside me to understand what I go through, what I've been through, and the fact that I take medications, and that's what helps me be stable as well as getting help. So no, it's not okay to just dismiss someone's feelings or someone's symptoms, because that can be so dangerous. A lot of people who are feeling depressed or have some type of mental illness oftentimes want to self-harm or want to commit suicide. So by dismissing those thoughts and those feelings and those symptoms, then we could actually be harming them by not getting that person to get the help they need. Misconception number 9 is that you don't look like you have a mental illness. So I think I kind of played on that in the one before, but that's also one that I get a lot. I mean, you're in school, you get good grades, you're doing this and that. You don't look like you have a mental illness. And I'm like, but I do. You don't understand the struggles that I went through to be here today, to be fine. You know, I had to work twice as hard as everyone else, at least throughout high school and my first years of college, just to make good grades, just to feel kind of okay, because I was struggling emotionally. I was not okay. But yes, I worked really hard, and that's what got me to where I am today. So just because I don't look like someone who has a mental illness, it makes me think, what does someone who has a mental illness look like? And that's a misconception. People who have a mental illness don't just look like the people who they show on movies and stuff like that. You know, people who have mental illness look like you and me. They look like anyone. We might struggle some days, we might be fine other days, but you know, we're still working. At least most of us are, and some people are struggling and some people are hiding it. But most people who are struggling are working, are going to school. You're not going to be, you know, like not facing life. You know, if everybody who had a mental illness was just stuck in the room, then, you know, you would see the world pretty empty. And that's where you have to realize, yes, we have our moments of struggle. Yes, some people can't get up right now and they're in bed and they're crying, they're depressed. And, you know, there are some mental illnesses that are so serious that they require a different kind of care. But a lot of people are not like that. A lot of people get treated and they live a pretty normal life. So it's important to understand that. For number 10, I have that races, like different races, are affected more by mental illnesses than others. And that is not true. From my research, that's actually, we're all affected in the same way. But what differentiates each culture or race is the way that they approach mental illnesses. I come from the Hispanic culture where mental illnesses are not talked about. People are not treated for them. People who have severe mental illnesses are hidden, or you're told that you shouldn't have these emotions or to get over it. And that's so bad. And so that's why you would say, like, oh, people in other countries don't show their mental illnesses as much. But it's not because of that. It's because sometimes in certain cultures, you're not allowed to get treated. You're not allowed to show your symptoms. So you have to suffer silently. And that's definitely not okay. But any race, any culture is, you know, exposed or could have a mental illness. And I mean, I do think that, at least in the Hispanic culture, I think that it's progressing. I think it is getting better. But there is so much work to be done to improve the stigma surrounding this so more people can get help. And I mean, this will conclude the video for this week. But I really do hope that you liked it. And I want to know what you guys have faced in your life. What have people told you about mental illnesses that are just misconceptions? And you're like, oh, I wish people didn't think that. Because I could probably talk about that in next week's video or further along. But these are the ones that I thought were very important. A lot of them I have faced in my own life, and I'm sure that you guys have seen those too. And it's important to educate others, because sometimes all these misconceptions come from generation to generation to generation. Like, it's what their parents heard, and then what their parents taught their kids, and all that kind of stuff. And then if we don't talk about it, then the world will never learn. And that's why I share my story every week, because I think it's important and it could hopefully save some lives. So if you like this video, please don't forget to like it, comment, subscribe, and share it with somebody who you believe should watch it. And always remember that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and a bad day does not mean a bad life.